Hi, everybody. I am so happy to have a chance to have a few of your minutes today. My name is Wendy Coates, and I am one of the degenerate education researcher team members here with all of the wonderful people you've been talking to today. My point today is to talk to you about, you're just at the very end of this wonderful boot camp about getting started in education research. So now what do? You've had this great workshop. You're not ready to go out and get national funding yet. You've got to have the next step. So the first thing I wanted to do is I wanted to talk to you for just a couple minutes about what makes a successful education scholar. And it turns out that what makes a successful education scholar is really the exact same thing that makes a successful any kind of scholar. So if we can kind of think about it, you need to know stuff. You can't go out there and just say, oh, well, you should just fund me because of who I am or whatever. You actually have to be knowledgeable enough so that you can design a worthwhile question that you can study that is impactful and has a pretty high level outcome. We don't really care if, your residents are happy with your course, they're satisfied. We want to know that it's going to change their behavior, and more importantly, it's going to change patient outcomes. And we hope that the residents also enjoy it, but that's not our end goal. So we have to have knowledge. We can't really do this all by ourselves. We have to have people who are willing to work with us and people who are our mentors, because nobody gets where they are by themselves. We have to sort of stand on the shoulders of the people who went before us. And that is the best way for us to make a name and to make a career in this discipline. And finally, who wants to do this in isolation? We need to do this as a member of a network. So think of these as three pillars. Number one, knowledge. Number two, mentorship. And number three, effective networks where you can go and have your people that are going to help you, and when you're ready to do a study. If I've got a great idea, the first thing I do is I pick up the phone and I call all of my close research network buddies and say, hey, I think about this. And then they say, that's a terrible idea. Or that's a good idea, but I think I can make it better. And we work together like that. And you need to be a part of a network like that. So where do you go from here? There's a couple of different things that you can do after this course, which was a wonderful introduction. If you're looking for sort of a more spread out introductory course that has a little bit more information, there's the Market Cord program that you do the AAMC education research certificate courses. And it's kind of self-directed when you're learning them, but at at Market Cord, they do all of the work together as a group. And then when you're done with that, maybe the next level is you really want to become a specialist, and you do something like Armed Med Ed. So this is the sales pitch for you to think about doing Armed Med Ed and being a member of our third class of Armed Med Ed. We have one class that's about to graduate and one class that's been in the session all day long. Armed Med Ed is a course that is supported by Society for Academic Emergency Medicine to develop the next generation of education research scholars, and in a network that we call MPERC, which is Emergency Medicine Health Professions Education Consortium. And it's kind of along the same lines as PCARN, but we're like this, and PCARN is like this. Okay, but they had to start somewhere too, so that's where we are. And we would love to have you be part of that next class for Armed Med Ed, and we would love to have you as our colleague in education research, so you don't have to do it alone. You can have every single person in this room as an Armed Med Ed mentor, and we work together, we have a lot of fun, And we think that we're going to be having with the new class, Armed Med Ed the musical. Because they like to walk iguanas. That was like one of their main activities that they were saying was like things that they like to do. So we have an eclectic group. But I want to give you the opportunity to hear from two of the members of our inaugural class so that they can have a few minutes to tell you what their experience was like in Armed Med Ed and why they think that you should do it and what you need to have as a prerequisite to get in. It's a class that lasts for about a year. We meet in person a couple of times a year, and we have monthly meetings on Zoom throughout the year, interactive seminars. So I'm gonna turn it over to Ben Schnapp, and you can tell them, like, you're from Wisconsin, but I don't know all the details. So why don't you come on up here and you can tell us all the stuff.
Fantastic, thank you. Well, I don't know, Wendy, that was a pretty good sales pitch. I don't know that I can do any better than that, but I can certainly share my perspective on the course and sort of how I got involved and what I think I got out of it. I've been doing some manner of medical education scholarship for a while. I did my education scholarship fellowship at Northwestern before coming up to University of Wisconsin to be APD. Afforded lots of great opportunities for scholarship up there, but didn't really have a lot of experience with trying to get grant funding. And that was sort of the piece that I felt like I was missing from my portfolio. As part of the Education Scholarship Fellowship, did apply for a grant, ultimately unsuccessful. But I felt like I was floundering during that process. I didn't really feel like I knew what I was doing. I felt like it was one thing where I was in way over my head, and I didn't really understand any of the gamesmanship with it, or what I was supposed to be doing to construct any of the various pieces. So it wasn't all that surprising to me then that when the decisions came out, they were like, yeah, like this is sort of okay, but no, like this is not going to work for you. So, I always had that in the back of my mind as something like, oh, that's probably something you should think about and pursue and get some of those skills in the future. This opportunity came along, and I think that the other piece, Wendy kind of mentioned and alluded to, really rung true for me. There's a wonderful crew of researchers up at the University of Wisconsin. There's a wonderful crew of medical education scholars, but nobody who's kind of more senior in the medical education scholarship realm. So I was kind of starting to look for those people who specifically were those medical education scholarship mentors to kind of take what I was doing to the next level, to be those people to kind of run things by and sort of hone and shape ideas to even better ideas and even more publishable and interesting things. So that's kind of the two things that I feel like I got most out of the course, is this wonderful crew of people who I can reach out to at any time. We had a WhatsApp group that's going, and still feel like I could use that, or email any of these great folks. And also this idea of kind of shrinking the change. Rather than being this big scary thing of, oh, I'm applying for a grant, no, I have a pretty good sense of, okay, we just got to bang out this piece, and why. I think that's the other piece is, I think I have a much better understanding now of what the value of that is and where, grant funding kind of comes in and how that can sort of augment a project and help take it from maybe a really cool idea that you had that might be pretty okay if you just did it at your own institution to something that really is amazing at the next level. That's my 2 cents.
Good afternoon, everybody. So my name is John Whiteman, and I don't know how I got into the course. So my entire scholarship pretty much has been integrative and applicative. So if you look at the 4 scholarships, discovery, teaching, integration, and application, and I've built a career on integration and application, but hadn't done much in the way of discovery. Certainly had been teaching my entire career, 30 plus years. But when I got a few small grants early in my career from some no-name organizations, but they were enough to build some curriculum, but I had no clue how to do outcome measures of that curriculum. And if you're going to gather resources and bring money into the department, offset whatever, you got to prove that you're actually doing something. And when accrediting bodies like the LCME if it's undergraduate medical education, ACGME if it's GME, they're going to come in and not necessarily look for outcomes, but you need to be able to demonstrate value to your parent organizations. And so I'm now a department chair, so it's kind of like never too late to start this. And I'm, actually going to be retiring in August. And, I started this course to not only be able to do some academics into my post-career so that I can actually do it without having to balance it with personnel issues and budgets and, and all those other things. I get to do the fun stuff and actually devote however much time I want to do to it. But primarily, and maybe this is why I got in, was that I want to bring all this stuff back to my faculty as part of faculty development. And so mentors are great. Some of the people who have been in this class have just been absolutely awesome. But being able to grow other people and keep that pipeline going up is just incredibly important. So, if I can bring some of this back, get some more experience in this type of research, then be able to mentor people later, we can keep this going and just keep building this great cadre that, again, is doing quality, outcome-based educational research that is showing that what we're doing is effective both for the learners, for the organization, for society as a whole.
Thank you both so much for your kind words about the course. Another nice thing is that the SAEM Foundation, that they keep asking for donations, and then you wonder, well, where does this money all go? And can any of it come to me? When we started Armed Med Ed, it was fully supported by the board and funded. And then the foundation, like a group of our people on the startup committee task force, we went to the SAEM Foundation board and petitioned to have a grant for Armed Med Ed. So there's a $25,000 education research grant that's only available to Armed Med Ed people who are in the course or recent graduates of the course. So, I think the organization is putting its money where its mouth is, that education research is a valuable discipline, and we're looking to make sure that in emergency medicine, we have the best of all the specialties in this area. I'm going to turn it back over to Sally now, and appreciate all of your attention, and you can feel free to be in touch anytime, and any of the people here can answer any questions you might have about Armed Med Ed, and some people can even answer questions about Merck at Cord, like Jamie, for example. Anyway.
All right. So I think our next session was to mostly to talk about kind of publications, like where we can publish. I'm putting a QR code up. So I've got a QR code up. This is the evaluation form. Don't laugh at my survey design. I just was in a mood. So let's just leave it at that. You'll see when you get there. And maybe just saying that so that maybe you'll open it up. I'm not sure I would model my survey design. But nonetheless, if that doesn't work, we can get there another way. All right. So basically what we're going to do is tips and tricks to publishing. And so let's get our people up here. So Susan, Mike, Jamie, everybody up. Have a seat. Be a panel. Yep. And so mostly this is tips and tricks to publishing. I guess remind everybody what your publishing role is, okay. And then we'll go from there. So.
Yeah, bring your own BYOC.
Yep.
All right, I'll kick us off. So I'm Nicole DiOrio. Well, then I'm in front of the. Oh, I see. Yeah. I do work for AEM ENT, which I'll let Susan tell you about a little more, but I'm the executive editor for Journal of Graduate Medical Education. Executive editor, every journal works differently, but I'm like the vice editor basically, and I do a big look over of papers that are probably going to be accepted. And just a little plug, please consider JGME for the publication of your work. We have all kinds of article types and love working with like junior researchers, people who are new to publishing, to really give a lot of support and fine-tuning of papers. So I'll go this way.
So I started out editing with Journal of GME when it first came out, and now I'm editor-in-chief of Academic Emergency Medicine Education and Training, SAEM's Journal for Education and Training.
Yeah, I am one of the decision editors for AEM ENT and have been so since it started, 5 years ago now? Yeah.
Same.
The team, all of us.
So I'm a decision editor at Academic Medicine, Annals of Emergency Medicine, AM Education and Training, American Journal of Emergency Medicine, Western Journal of Emergency Medicine, and social media editor for Academic EM.
I am on the editorial board of Academic Medicine as an associate editor at JGME with Nicole, associate editor for Susan at AEM Education and Training, deputy editor at Perspectives on Medical Education for a section that's on hold right now because we had so many acceptances, but it'll be coming off called Show and Tell, which is kind of their innovation report series.
Is that for Teresa?
Perspectives on Medical Education. And I do like associate editor work at CGEM, but at CGEM that just means that you're like a senior reviewer. So, but they keep you around to help with reviews and editorials. That's Canadian Journal of Emergency Medicine.
All right, so I think that's everybody. So let's just do, and not, I don't want everyone to do it, but we'll kind of pass the mic. So when somebody's looking to submit something, how should they choose a journal? That's a tough question, because of course they're going to say my journal. But nonetheless, how do you choose? How do you decide where to send it?
Oh, okay, sure. You got to think about your target audience. To me, it's all about who you're trying to talk to. Although there are multiple journals with overlapping audiences, I think every time you target a different journal, you need to make sure that your article is for the audience that that journal is targeting. Because you may have to change the amount of problem statement you have. You might have to up your game with the citations and your background information, your methods, etc. And you'll have to keep that different audience in mind each time you go and actually submit to a different journal. So there's a fair bit of customization. Like if you're submitting to JGME, it better be about graduate medical education or postgraduate medical education. Sometimes you can sneak it in if it's like graduating medical students that are about to become interns and first years, right? So, but it's really about kind of specialty level training, right? And so if you're doing something about pre-meds, they're not going to be interested. It might be a great paper. They might still say not for us because of the audience being so different.
I think building on that, it's a little bit of how do you find that out in the first place, right? It's all well and good if you submit there a bunch of times, you have a sense of that. I think the easiest way is ask people you know, ask other people who have published in this arena, ask other colleagues. Look at the journal, look at the last couple of issues. If you were doing a qualitative study and they've never published a qualitative study, you're probably not going to get that qualitative study in there. Like match it to what they've done before. Look through the style of what they've written. The other thing that I've come across recently is I've kind of branched out a little bit into some other areas is I don't know those journals. I know EM well. I get medical education literature. Once I start going to ID, I'm like infectious disease, I'm like, I have no idea. I know like 5 journals there. I have no concept of what's appropriate for that. So you ask your colleagues, but also there's a program called Jane. If you Google it, it's like journal author name estimator. And you basically can copy paste the title or the abstract and know popular a whole bunch of articles or a bunch of journals that would actually accept your paper. Or I shouldn't say accept, but that way it would be appropriate for to help identify things you may not have thought about, right? Maybe I'm doing a study of how to improve EKG reading, and I'm anchored on EM and I'm anchored on medical education, but there's a lot of really relevant EKG journals that actually may be appropriate for that. So ask your friends, utilize online resources, and see what they've read before.
Do you want a new question? Okay.
Let's go to another question.
Pet peeves.
Okay. peeves. Oh, pet peeves. Okay. My conceptual framework, my lens is that I am a rule follower, and that is what makes me a good editor, and a copy editor in particular. But follow the rules, please, 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 for the instructions for authors. So much work is done. We touched on this at my table with if you're using a checklist for when you're submitting a paper. You want to do everything you can to augment the positive bias that someone has when they're taking that first look at your paper, right? You want to convey that you know what you're doing and that this is good stuff. So that begins with following the instructions for the authors, title the sections correctly, follow the word count, give them every reason to say yes and not say no out of hand. I think that it gets you 90% of the way there.
I think we all know that you submit a manuscript, and if it doesn't get accepted at a particular journal, many people will try to submit it somewhere else. Please make sure you pick the right name of the journal you're submitting it to. Like, it is unbelievable how many times people just take it and do it, and I'm like, gone, not even looking any further. So again,
Like in
it's
the
the
cover
instructions
letter,
in the
you
cover
mean?
letter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or the formatting for a different
Yeah,
journal.
so a different journal is send it to your journal.
We see that.
So I think as a decision editor, one of the things that's my pet peeve is when I have reviewers who have given very thoughtful reviews and given very specific advice or questions, and I've read those and made sure that I agree with them. And if I don't, I take them out or I'll modify them. And then I'll get a letter back from someone that says, goes through the different comments that we've given, and we'll say, thank you for that great comment, and then not address it or do anything with it. And it's like, we're giving you this because we're telling you what you need to do to get published in our journal. So if we're giving it to you, take advantage of that. That's why we're doing it. And, at least for AEM ENT, I feel like we give a lot of great advice, and, we give written advice to almost everyone who, goes into review. And so take that advice and run with it, because we're telling you how to improve your paper.
That way. Anything else? Other pet peeves.
Can I just add? I think it needs to be fun. You guys can be okay? It's okay. You guys can. I need help. I'll just do my trauma team leader voice. Yeah, okay, fine. I was just gonna say that sometimes you may want to disagree with the review, and that's okay too.
And that's fine.
But you can't just say thanks for the great comment and then passive aggressively ignore it, is what Steve's getting at. You should take it.
Yeah,
You just take it on and say,
Yeah,
thank
I-
you
I
for
do
your opinion. However, respectfully, here's the reasons why I have sided with Varpio in my definition of conceptual framework, for instance. And I understand that bordage exists. However, that's not the reading of that terminology that I've chosen. And so, as you can see, I have outlined the problem gap hook for this paper. However, I can understand if you're thinking about it in the other way, that I have not been as clear, or we have not been as clear in our explanation of the theories and the grounding literature that inform the study design, and we have added to the methods in that way, right? And so you can disagree, but you better still do something with it. Sometimes it'll just be, sorry, mea culpa, we've added stuff to the limitations, because we can't redo the study at this point, right? And so sometimes you have to say, that's a great point, that would have been a lovely study design. That is not the study design we did. However, we understand that that's a key limitation, and we have added that to our limitation section, right?
Questions from
I'm all
that?
fired up now.
We're all. You guys about the reviewing process. So I do like I'm an associate editor on a different journal, like for my sub-specialty, and we address this in one way. But I really want to know what you guys think, because it's kind of troublesome. Like you send something out for a review, and it comes back, and then the thing you ask them to change is maybe a little bit worse than it was before, but the paper is good, and then you resend it out for review, and then you get two people saying accept So
Journals
I'd
are
like to hear
different,
what you
how
guys
they
think
do it.
about how to deal with.
I think it depends what it is, right? I mean, what the issue is. But I think, there have been multiple ways that we've dealt with it with AEM, ENT. Some have been an email and say, hey, look, this is what we need. If you make this change, it's going to move through. Others are, it goes back and forth. And you're like, wait a second, can we just have a phone call? And then you explain what the issue is, coach them through it, and typically they want to get their manuscript published. They're going to get where you want it. Or there's a compromise. Like you say, oh, I didn't understand what you were trying to get at. How about if we word it this way? I think we've been pretty open because we want people to be published. We want to support them. And we're one of the newer journals, and we've done that, I think, really as an educational opportunity for our team. But every journal is different. Some will just say, forget it. I'm not doing that. I don't know what the rest of you guys, you have something you want to say about that?
Well, I think regardless of the philosophy, the point I wanted to make is we're all just regular people. Like, we're normal people that you can talk to, right? We want to have conversations. We might not agree, but that's fine. Let's have the conversation. We're not inaccessible Wizard of Oz behind the curtain. It's fine to email us. You may wonder, is that a boundary that shouldn't be crossed? Well, we're good at, maintaining those boundaries, and we'll tell you, no, this needs to go through the normal peer review process. It's not appropriate for you to ask that.
But we don't always also, at least AEM, ENT doesn't send it back to a bunch of different reviewers. Like, we may look at it, get it, and then decide what we're going to do on it. And sometimes they'll say, hey, Susan, will you chime in? Let's just make a call on this. Because it gets ridiculous going back and forth. Because what you're saying, you pull new people in, and they have a whole different perspective on how to look at it. That just complicates matters.
So if you get 3 good reviews the first time, then you reconcile it with those.
Yeah, and we may just get 2, and we have the decision editor, and they'll chime in. Because interestingly, it's hard to find reviewers. Like, my decision editor's like, we can't find reviewers. I'm like, do the best you can, you guys, send it out. But we use a lot of the same people because the community's pretty small. So it's challenging. So we do the best we can to get peer review. We definitely get peer review, but we don't keep going on and on because it's really difficult. In fact, if you guys want to be reviewers and you're not, let us know. We need people.
Every journal is different, though. So the Journal of Continuing Education in Health Professions, for instance, they use their peer reviewers like the same messengers, because when I accept a review for that journal, I'm going to have 4 versions that I will say until I'm like, I am good with this version. And I've written the editor-in-chief, I'm like, you have decision editors, they should decide this paper's fine. And I'll write that in the edit. But they have decided that that's the way they're conducting their journal. And I've had a conversation with Simon Keto, who's the editor-in-chief. He's like, this is how I'm choosing to run the journal. And I'm like, okay. So I almost never accept unless it's something that I'm really interested in, because I am going to be tortured until that article is done as well as a reviewer. So I commit to maybe 1 a quarter for them because it's a lot of work.
I will say the overarching theme is communication. That's it. I have a paper that I just got revisions, or I just got revised and resubmit, and the editor and decision editor had distinctly different opinions, totally different. It's an ultrasound article because, well, I'm ultrasound. And one of them was like, you need to focus more on ultrasound. And the other one's like, I don't want to hear about ultrasound in this article. And I was like, I don't know how to rectify those. Those are just, they could not be more different. So we emailed them. And we said, what would you like us, here's the thing, politely. I was like, what would you like us to do? And then we did actually a couple emails back and forth and resolved it. And if not, it would have been a phone call. I think that communication, that could have been a dozen back and forth with the journal and several revisions, and they would have been annoyed, and I would have been annoyed. And instead, just a simple email or a phone call, and I've done that a number of times, both on either end of this. It resolves so many issues, and everyone's fine. And then you're like, oh yeah, because you're just people. You're just like me. We're just trying to create good literature together.
One other thing would be, some journals are snobbier than others, and they have the privilege of being so because they are highly ranked and highly sought over, and they only have so many pages. And so sometimes, even though your article is pretty decent and solid, some journals are accepting single-digit percentages of all the papers they actually screen. So when you're down to 8%, the paper has to be pretty decent or has to say something pretty impactful to get out for review even, and not just get a desk reject. And so sometimes that's a great compliment to you, to that you've made it past the first pass. That's usually about 30% of papers. Another 10 to 12% will probably be rejected after review, and then another 5 to 6% will be rejected maybe after even a revision, because I think more and more journals are, I know people don't like to do that, and we don't do that in AEM education and training, but for the borderline 5 to 6%, there's an increasing number of people that are giving people a chance to revise to see how well they do, because they're kind of in that liminal space. So just know that an invitation to revise does not mean that it's a slam dunk, because increasingly I'm seeing meta journals across the board rejecting after that first review because they wanted to give you a chance. Rather than assuming you wouldn't be able to do it, they give you the benefit of the doubt, which I think is actually better, but it also means that it's not like you're for sure going to get accepted after being invited to do a major revision.
Okay, any other questions?
Oh, okay. Just a wave. Can I spin Wendy's comment, or sorry, Susan's comment about if any of you want to review, like we always need reviewers, I would frame that as it's a really good idea for you to be a reviewer, not just because it serves us, but this is one of the best ways to grow your own knowledge about scholarship and research methods is by reading papers. And forcing yourself to put on a critical lens. Are people meeting all of these check marks? And then also you get the benefit of seeing what the other reviewers from the paper thought as well. And you can kind of measure yourself against that, like, oh, they thought of that point and I didn't. Or, look, wow, I thought of something and I really added some value to the team that other reviewers didn't see. I mean, to this day, I still read reviews that bring up points that I hadn't considered. So it's a great opportunity to continuously learn and improve your own scholarship. And it's a great way to do these, to get involved in networks and meet other people as well. So highly recommend.
I just had a question, and it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with how to respond to reviewers. So I understand, if you don't agree, having like a respectful response for that, or if it's something with a lot of limitations. But how do you recommend responding to something that is really, it's something that the reviewer would have liked to have seen in the study, but based on your design, it's beyond the scope of the study. You can't necessarily go back, but at the same time, if it didn't address your objective, it's not really necessarily a limitation. So I guess how do you, I've typically said that, we found that to be, that's an interesting question, but we found it to be beyond the scope of the study for these reasons. Is that?
Yep.
Yeah. You could say, then we added a sentence saying this could be some great future work, or if you really feel like you needed to change the manuscript. I agree. I'm talking a lot, though.
No, I did. Yeah. You can actually add it in the future directions, right? So you can say, future directions would be, and who knows, maybe the reviewer will be flattered enough. We'll do this. And then they'll let you, because they haven't done it.
Building the network.
All right, it's been a long day, so we'll let you go for the time being. And see you around. So if you have questions throughout the conference, just grab somebody. If you start working on your project or have questions for any of us, just let us know. And good luck with your work, and have a good meeting.
Yeah.